Grade 12 Economics. Good afternoon. My name is Mr. Mhlomo. I'm back here with you today. Please remember that this lesson is presented by you by Phakama Research Development in collaborations with Saigon Discover. So today I'm back with you on the revision session for paper 2 after we covered our paper 1 last week. I just want to congratulate you on paper 1. Remember, we had our session for paper 1, which was very, very much interesting, and I believe we did well because the paper came the way we expected it. So today we are here again to try and see how paper 2 prevails and how much can we obtain as we have our own target that we have set as candidates. So this is paper 2 with special focus on microeconomics as well as contemporary economic issues. So please join me so that you can see what I have for you in the pocket. The following are the lesson objectives that will be achieved during the course of this lesson. Remember, for the academic year of 2024, this is our final lesson, which is on paper 2 that we'll be writing tomorrow. So this lesson aims at training candidates on how to approach economics paper 2. It provides some examples and guidelines, as guidelines to approach different questions in all sections of the question paper. And then the following slide is giving you just some details on the question paper or paper 2, which will be tomorrow. So paper 2 final revision. Today is the 18th. When are we writing the paper? The paper will be written tomorrow on second session. It will be 19th of November 2024. Time will be 14 hours or 2 o'clock. It's a second session question paper, so you still have time to go through and prepare yourself if you are not basically doing Africans, because Africans candidates will be writing in the morning. So this is the composition of paper 2. Remember, I mentioned before microeconomics. So we have two teams here as usual. So we have team micro and team contemporary economic issues. Team micro knows that it has to know graphs and the theory of graphs thoroughly so that it can be able to dominate the question paper. Team economic issues doesn't have much issues actually, because it's most of the theory, even though there are few graphs that are there, but you just have to understand the content in there, and it's flowing, by the way. So if you are very much good in graphs, you know that you are specializing on answering obviously question 1 is section A, question 2 in section B, question 4 as well as question 5. But if we are not good on graphs, your specialization could be on the side of economic issues, where we talk about inflation, tourism, as well as environmental sustainability. So the choice is yours. Everything is served here. So as we go on, we simply look on how questions are distributed or topics are distributed. Remember, today we are here on paper 2. Our paper is 150 marks, 2 hours, and then we have the main topic as microeconomics. In there, we have perfect markets, imperfect markets, as well as market failures. And then also, as we go on, we have contemporary economic issues as one of the main topics. In there, we have inflation, tourism, as well as environmental sustainability. So these are the topics that we'll be focusing on as we prepare, or that we are focusing on as we prepare. And tomorrow, these are the topics that will be assessed in your examination. And then we'll continue. Topics distribution per question. Obviously, in our question 1, as section A, we have both microeconomics and contemporary economic issues. It's 15 marks, 15 marks. So the micro will be 15 marks. Economic issues will also be 15 marks. That gives you 30. So you have your 30 marks. That is very important for you. And then question 2, we have your perfect market, imperfect market, as well as the market failure. This is out of 40 marks. So whenever you choose question 2, be aware that we'll be answering out of 40 marks. And then question 3, we have our contemporary economic issues, where we deal with inflation, tourism, as well as environmental sustainability. It's also 40 marks. And then question 4, the combination of both. We have microeconomics for 20 marks. And then we also have economic issues for 20 marks, which will be giving us 40 marks all in all if you combine both. So if you want to answer question 4, be aware that you will be integrating both topics, micro and economic issues. Then our question 5 is section C. Microeconomics is only 40 marks. So if you want to answer question 5, you are already fully informed about those essays for microeconomics. There must be a specialization of some sort in that case, because you know number of essays we have. And then question 6, contemporary economic issues, is also 40 marks. Then we don't have micro here in question 6. We don't have economic issues in our question 5. So be prepared. Should you want to answer question 5, know all of those essays for your question 5, which is microeconomics. Know them all. Do not just pick. Know them all. And then if you want to answer question 6 already, you must be fully informed about 6 essays for contemporary economic issues that will be discussed as we go on with the session. So details on the question paper, as usual, we start with indicating to you that each paper is 150 marks, and then duration is 2 hours. This time is enough for you so that you can complete the question paper. Ensure that you become more efficient. And then each paper comprises of 6 questions divided into 3 sections. So section A, there's question on which is compulsory for you. We saw in paper 1, section A was very much simple and accessible, and we believe you did very well. And then section B consists of 3 questions. So in there we have question 2, question 3, and question 4. So remember, in that situation, we have to choose only 2 questions out of the 3 questions given. Avoid choosing all questions because the marker will only be taking care of the first 2 questions, then the last one won't be considered. And then section C consists of 2 questions. You choose only one between question 5 and question 6. Just choose one question to answer in there. Do not answer both of them. And then that is our question 5 and question 6. And then we'll continue. Then section A, obviously, as we know, is 30 marks. And then that 30 marks is very important for you so that you can boost your confidence. Multiple choice items, which is the lower order. We have about 18 marks to work for in there. We are given 8 question statements, then with each of them is having 4 options where you have to choose the answer. And then matching items, column A and column B, that's a lower order also. We are given 8 options in column A and 9 options in column B. You match items and get 8 marks in there. It's easy to get also, but be careful. Do not guess. And then 1.3, that's where also lower order. That's when you are given the definition. You provide the concept or the term relevant. Do not give acronyms in there. It's 6 marks, which gives you up to 30 marks. And then remember, section A contribute about 20% in your paper 2. And then section B will contribute about 53.3% in your paper 2. And then section C will contribute about 26.7% in your paper 2. All in all, that will be giving you 100%. And then as we continue, our lesson is long, so I will try to be quick where I need to be quick, especially on the training, because it has been done also on paper 1. So it's more like the same training. So 1.1, you need to read the statement with understanding and try to derive an answer before looking at the given option. Do not just choose the answer without understanding the statement. Understand the statement, and then you must provoke your mind to give you an answer. Then look for that answer. Then the answer will be there. And then classify the given options. Remember that 2 options are from the relevant content, while the 2 is wrong. You then choose between the correct answer. Choose between the correct answers. So in there's one answer that is mainly correct. One answer is mostly correct, one answer is related. So choose the correct answer, not related answer. And then we go on, avoid leaving spaces in there. Ensure that you fill all gaps that are there. Do not leave spaces. And then NB, which is important, do not guess an answer without doing a depth analysis on the given options. I believe that we have seen with paper 1, everything became more accessible if you did the depth analysis. So even in paper 2, do the same. Know your concept to answer this section A. Matching items. So look at the column A concept and try to derive an answer before looking at the column B, or either way, look at the given definition or description in column B, then try to derive the answer without looking at the column A. Then you will have an idea which answer is, then you pick the answer on the given options. And then number 2, use the elimination method by matching answers that you are sure they are correct. Ensure that to start with answers that you are sure they are correct before you guess, because should you guess, you might be getting one answer wrong, meaning that as one answer is becoming wrong, 2 answers will be wrong automatically. So avoid guessing answers. Just start with what you are sure is correct, and then that is what we call elimination method. After that, go back and match again until you get the commonalities between those remaining options. Then look at answers that are confusing you. Do not guess as yet. Relate and make sense. Find commonality. And then we continue. After eliminating, you surely have a few options remaining. Relate again until you have one column B response remaining, which is expected to be wrong by you. And then it's very important. Remember that it's highly possible that choosing one wrong answer in this part result to two answers being wrong. So avoid just guessing. Ensure that the answer you pick is correct. Do not leave any option or question in column A unmatched. Match items as given to you. And then we continue with 1.3. This is very much obvious. You must know your terminology in order to be able to answer this one. Understand its description before writing an answer. Do not give an option to the marker. When you give it, you give the answer. Give one answer, not the first answer stroke the second one. Then that will create a problem for you because we'll lose both of those concepts. Use DBE study guide, mind the gap, terminology per topic to ensure that you understand and know the terminologies. Do not leave any question unanswered and do not comply. Interact vigorously with each description and give the answer. Remember, you must not provide us with acronyms. They are not allowed. Also, abbreviations are not allowed. So ensure that you answer in full concept or full words if ever you have to provide the concept. Then we go to section B. This is a lower order. Remember, this one does not need much from you. Also, you just have to remember and mention whatever that is required. So these are some examples. Give any two types of barriers to entry that exist under monopoly. So remember, if we talk about barriers to entry, we refer to those obstacles that will block the entry of new businesses into the market. So they can be natural or artificial. So we have natural barriers to entry as well as artificial barriers to entry. Remember, if we talk about natural barriers to entry, we refer to those barriers to entry that are economic in nature, that are not created by anyone. For instance, we refer to the economies of scale. If ever the firm or the business is advantaged by economies of scale, that business is not blocking any competitor like manually, but then it happens automatically because if a firm or business is faced by economies of scale, that means the firm is producing more goods at the lower cost per unit and sell them at the lower cost. So that will automatically be an obstacle to new firms that are willing to enter the market if they are faced by an issue of these economies of scale. And then artificial barriers to entry. These are barriers to entry that are created by the government through legislation. For instance, the patents or exclusive rights that are given to specific businesses to be the only producers of some goods and services. Those are believed to be artificial barriers to entry because they are not economic in nature. Remember, these two, the natural barriers to entry, will create for us what we call a natural monopoly, while artificial barriers to entry will create for us artificial monopoly. So it is very important for you to take it from lower order, middle order, and higher order. So you have the two. You have to mention them. Now, develop it further to differentiate between the two, differentiate between natural monopolies as well as artificial monopolies. After that, you can also be able to give a certain evaluation if ever you have to evaluate maybe the impact of natural monopolies and actual monopolies in the economy. Then we go further. Name two types of collusion. So we move straight to an oligopoly here. So we have an implicit collusion as well as the explicit collusion. Remember now, you are just mentioning here, you must develop it further. If we talk about implicit collusion, or it's also known as a tacit collusion or hidden collusion. So an implicit collusion is the collusion that occurs when one firm make decisions within the market and other firms copy the strategy or decision without any formal agreement. So there is no formal agreement that takes place between firms in this situation, but firms will be copying each other's decisions or strategies without any formal agreement. So that collusion is informed by what we call the price leadership process. What is meant by the price leadership? Price leadership occurs when one firm within the oligopoly industry make decisions on production techniques as well as pricing, and other firms copy those decisions without any formal agreement. So there is a price leader within the oligopoly. So the price leader will be the firm, or can be the firm with more market share within the industry, or the price leader can be the firm that understands market forces or as well as market signals more than any other firm or any other competitor within the industry. You can be the smallest firm in the industry, but if you understand the indicators or market signals, it will be easy for firms to follow your decision because you are always making profitable decisions. And then you can also be a dominant firm. If ever you're a dominant firm, you are having at least 32% market share within the industry. So in that case, you can be the price leader because of your domination position or dominant position within the market. And then we have an explicit collusion. It's also called an overt collusion or formal collusion. An explicit collusion contains a formal agreement between two or more firms within oligopoly industry, where firms will meet together and discuss price fixing as well as production techniques. So what informs explicit collusion? It is informed by cartels. What is meant by the cartel? So we have this thing that we call the cartel. Okay, so the cartel, we call this one the association between firms within the same industry where they meet to discuss prices and production techniques. So in this situation, firms will be meeting to discuss the way of production as well as their prices. So in there, they make some decision to be common. So that means now, as they make common decision on prices as well as production techniques, that will be leading to explicit collusion. It can be proven that firms did meet to discuss the price and production techniques. Then we call that one a cartel. It informs, explicit collusion happens easily under cartels, while implicit happens easily under the price leadership. And then we'll continue. Give any two examples of perfect market. In there, we talk about the likes of the foreign exchange market, and then we talk about also the agricultural produces. We talk about also, the Johannesburg Security Exchange. And then according to your research that we did in your term 2, we also indicated the likes of e-hailing industry as a part of example of the perfect market structure. Mention any two revenues that incur in the business. Remember, if we talk about revenues, we talk about income earned by the business or income that is receivable by the business. So we have firstly the total revenue. Then remember, total revenue refers to the total income earned by the business. So if we calculate total revenues, we simply say TR equals to P times Q. Then we get our total revenue. And then we go further to the average revenues as well as marginal revenues. And then we'll continue. Simply, we're still on the lower order where we just mentioned. Give any two negative externalities of tourism. Remember, tourism is having some effect that can be positive and negative. So the negative ones can be as follows. We know that there can be increase in prices for local people. So if ever our area is a tourist destination, there are some attractions in there. That will mean the local businesses will try to increase their prices so that they will maximize their profits. By doing so, that will also affect local people because they depend on this business to buy goods and services. So that will be affecting them because price will be inflated or increased because of tourism. And then also we have the likes of destruction of flora and fauna. Remember, whenever people are visiting the area, some of them leave their carbon footprint and also destruct the environment. And then also we have increasing level of pollution. Remember, as people are touring into the particular place in large numbers, that can lead to increase in amount of pollution. For instance, there can be a waste, like solid waste. Also, there can also be what we call air pollution because cars will be there burning fossil fuels. And then also businesses in that particular area will be pushed to produce more goods and services, which might be causing more pollution, and that will be bad for environment. Environmental stress. Remember, if ever people are touring into one place at a shorter period of time, also in large numbers, they cause what we call an environmental stress. And then a high level of traffic congestion also with more cars and more people going in there. There can be congestion, which will be affecting surroundings. So those are some negative effects of what we call tourism. And then we simply move to the middle order. Remember, in this situation, you must be able to link because these questions require to answer in full sentences. How can environmental subsidies be used to ensure sustainable development in South Africa? Remember, now you must know what is meant by environmental subsidies. Remember, that's a cash or grant given by the government to those individuals or businesses that sustain or protect the environment. Those are environmental subsidies. So, should they be given by the government to businesses or individuals, those people will be encouraged to ensure that they take care of the environment and promote the green energy. So let's check our green economy. Subsidies can be granted to businesses to reduce environmental damage by recycling of bottles, cans, and cartons. And then also the government can subsidize new technology that saves energy, such as energy-saving lights or bulbs, or also solar geysers, air power to reduce air pollution. And then we continue promoting environmental friendly substitutes like unleaded petrol. And then we continue again with another question in the middle order. Why are merit goods normally undersupplied by the market? You can't answer this question without understanding what is meant by merit goods. Remember, if we talk about the merit goods, we mean goods that are beneficial into the society. They do not contain any negative externality. So in that situation, let's see the answer. The market only produces goods that are profitable. Some goods are highly desirable for the general welfare of the people, but not highly rated in the market. Remember, consumers are not willing to pay for some goods and services, even though they are very much important for their welfare. So in that situation, the market only produces goods that will earn them the profit. They do not produce goods that are not highly demanded by consumers. They can be desirable for the welfare, but if people are not willing to pay for them, that will mean the market will undersupply those goods and services. So private costs exceed the private benefit. If they had to be paid for, relatively little would be consumed. What impact does preservation have on the environment? If we preserve, what are we doing? It is very important for you to understand again what is meant by preservation, taking care of renewable and non-renewable resources so that they remain intact even for future generation. So if ever we preserve resources, what can happen? Preservation prevents the extinction of plant and animal species. It ensures that non-renewable resources are not lost forever. Remember, if we use resources in an event that is destructive, they can be lost forever. If ever they're renewable, they can take time to be recovered. So it is very important that we become preservative as we use natural resources, which can be either renewable and non-renewable. And then we check. Why will the economic profit made by perfect market individual firm disappear in the long run? So now we know that in the long run, all inputs are flexible. All factor brackets are flexible within the market. The capital and land are also flexible to change. In that situation, new firms find it easy to enter the market in the long run. As firms are entering the market, that will mean the competition for individual firms will be increasing. What will happen? Within the market, there will be increase in the production and the supply of goods and services because there are now more firms that are existing in the market. But individual firms will find it difficult because these new firms will be taking the same consumers that they are having. So they will be sharing consumers. In that situation, then what is going to happen? As new firms are entering the market in the long run, that will mean the profits enjoyed by businesses in the short run will be reduced to the normal profit because now these firms that are existing there will find themselves having to supply and produce less goods and services due to the increase in competition. So let's check what is being mentioned there. So profits attract new businesses easily into the market, making it more competitive. Remember, if the market is becoming more competitive, that means there are many businesses and also goods are sold at the lower possible cost. Increased competition will lead to decrease in prices, which will reduce profits for existing businesses. And then there can be an increase in number of substitute products produced within, which will reduce the demand. So as firms enter the market under perfect market, remember they sell homogeneous products. That means the number of substitutes are increasing. As they increase, existing firms will find themselves facing a high level of competition, and then their profits will then be reduced because of the increase in level of substitute goods in the market. And then we continue. Okay. Also, this will eventually lead to normal profit by the monopolistic or perfect market firms in the long run. So actually, both monopolistic firms and perfect market will be affected in the same way in the long run because they are faced by the issue of no barriers to entry. So as competitors are free to enter the market, that means their profits for the short run will be reduced in the long run to the normal profit. Why is headline inflation always higher than the core inflation? Now, it is very important for you to know both of these types of inflation. Headline inflation is also known as a CPI inflation. It has not been adjusted. It contains or it has effects of mortgage bonds or interest rate. While the core inflation has been adjusted because it does not include or it excludes those goods and services with highly volatile prices such as red meat as well as the fuel cost. So in this case, let's check. Headline inflation is unadjusted. It has an effect of mortgage bond, while core inflation has been adjusted. It excludes goods with highly volatile prices. So remember, these questions require you to link and you must answer them in full sentences. So you cannot listen the situation. Also, avoid also repeating the question statement because that won't be marked. If ever they ask you the effect, if you say negative alone, there's no mark. If you say positive, there's no mark. Ensure that as you answer, you explain should be in full sentence. This is the data response now. So the data response, you are given monopolies here. Monopolies can be established by the government from natural or from integration. In many jurisdictions, competition laws restrict monopolies due to government consent over potential adverse effects. Holding a dominant position or the monopoly in a market is often not illegal in itself. However, certain categories of behavior can be considered as abusive and therefore incur legal restrictions when the business is dominant. So this shows us, if you can look at the cartoon, this is one business trying to buy out other smaller businesses that are coming into the market. So this can be seen as artificial monopoly. So let's look at questions. Identify the type of monopoly depicted in the cartoon. Is an artificial monopoly. Remember, we spoke about the artificial monopoly, which is created because barriers to entry are not economic in nature. And then what message is depicted by the above cartoon? An artificial monopoly buying out competitors from the market so that they cannot compete with it. Briefly describe the term patent as used in economics. So it gives one exclusive or legal right to the manufacturer. So this is a legal right by legislation which allows the firm to be the only producer of a particular product. So in the other words, it's a legal document that allows the firm to be the only producer of a particular product for the given period of time. We call that one a patent. How does the slope of the monopoly's demand curve differ from that of the monopolistic competitor? Remember, the demand curve for the monopoly is downward sloping. Same thing applies to the one for the monopolistic, is also downward sloping. However, they differ because the demand curve for the monopoly is downward sloping but relatively inelastic. Why? It is relatively inelastic because under the monopoly, there is one firm that is existing to produce a unique product. So the firm produces the product that does not have any perfect substitute. Even if the firm increases the price, consumers will not stop buying the product because the product does not have any perfect substitute. They continue buying the product. So consumers become less sensitive to the change in price due to the fact that the product that is sold under the monopoly does not have any perfect substitute. And then the one for the monopolistic, remember, you must go back to the background. The monopolistic competitor or competition contain, free barriers to entry. There are no barriers to entry. Firms are free to enter or leave the market. So under the monopolistic competition, as firms enter the market, that will mean they will be increased in competition and the increase in number of substitute goods available in the market. So if ever the commission is increasing and also substitutes are increasing, that will mean should one firm increase the price, while other firms are still selling at the lower cost, consumers will be having a choice. They have a right to just stop buying from the firm which is selling at the high cost by demanding on those firms that are selling at the lower cost. So in that situation, consumers become very sensitive to the increase or decrease in the price under monopolistic because of the availability of substitute goods. A slope of the monopolist demand curve is relatively inelastic. Remember, we have seen most of the confusion here. Monopolist is a monopoly firm. We simply suffix as the monopoly, then we call it a monopolist. Then monopolistic doesn't change, it remains as a monopolistic. So monopolist demand curve is relatively inelastic or steeper sloped compared to that of the monopolistic competitor, which is relatively elastic due to the fact that consumers are having the freedom of choice and there are substitutes available for them. How do monopolies become disincentive into the economy? We know that, okay, firstly, if it is a disincentive, then it does not benefit the economy the most. Monopolies are protected by barriers to entry, which limit market competition, resulting to less productivity and less supply of goods and services. Monopolies charge relatively high prices to keep up with their profits. Remember, they charge prices above their marginal cost, which make it very much difficult for consumers to afford the product. So they become a disincentive or less beneficial to the economy because they exploit consumers. Less competition caused by barriers to entry that protect monopolies restrict the output and employment opportunities. So since monopoly becomes the only producer of the product, there will be less output available, so which is also known as inefficiency. It can lead to both allocative inefficiency and productive inefficiency within the market. Then we continue. The data response under oligopoly. Start the graph below and answer questions that follow. Here we have the Keynes demand curve. Remember, there's a long theory behind the kinked demand curve. So we have the top segment, which is relatively elastic. We have the bottom segment, which is relatively inelastic. You have to know why these segments are like this. The top segment is relatively elastic because should one firm under oligopoly decide to increase the price from 40 to 45 while other firms are selling at the lower cost, the what we call consumers will be very sensitive to the increase in price, and they will buy less from the firm that is selling at the 45 rand and buy more on the firm that are selling at what we call 40 rand. So as consumers are becoming more sensitive to the increase in price, they will demand less, which will be increasing the top segment, which is relatively elastic. And then also, should the firm lower the price from 40 to 25, to 28 here, that will mean other firms will follow the strategy because they will be avoiding losing their market share to this firm that is selling at the lower cost. So if one firm lower the price from 40 to 28, it is willing to enjoy more profit compared to its competitors. However, as other firms notice that this firm has lowered the price, they will copy the lowered price immediately to avoid losing their market share. So any expected profit will be lost immediately. So that means consumers then will become less sensitive to the decrease in price if even other firms are selling at the same price, which is 28 rand. So that will mean now there will be the bottom segment, which is relatively inelastic. This is the segment I'm talking about. All right, so this is our kinked demand curve, which is having two segments, namely the top segment and the bottom segment. For you to answer here also, it is very important for you to be able to answer the total revenues, be able to calculate total revenues as informed by your examination guidelines. Okay, we'll continue. So let's check questions. Identify the inelastic demand curve. ED1 below the kink, the second segment or the bottom segment. That one is inelastic because consumers are not sensitive to price change or price decrease since all firms are selling at the lower price. Name the demand curve depicted in the graph. That's a kinked demand curve. And then we continue briefly describe the term tacit collusion. Remember, the tacit collusion is also known as an implicit collusion or hidden collusion. Let's check. So the behavior by firms is motivated by arrangement that is not formal, unspoken actions between oligopolist firms that are likely to minimize the competitive response. When dominant firm increase its price and hope that its rivals will see it as a market signal and increase their prices. So this occurs when individual firm change the price and other firms copy the price or decision making without any formal agreement. It's an implicit or hidden collusion or tacit collusion. How does the profit of an oligopoly differ from the profit of monopolistic competition in the long run? So the oligopoly will make economic profit over the long run compared to the monopolistic competitor making normal profit in the long run. Remember, oligopolies will always be involved in collusive practices by charging relatively high price to keep up with their profits, while monopolistic does not do such. So they make normal profits in the long run. In the long run because of the increase in competition. Why will the above producer be reluctant to decrease his price from 40 to 28? Show all calculations. In this situation, you just have to calculate. Then you make a reasoning after calculation. So the producer's revenue will decrease. At the price of 40, the producer will earn 28,000, which we get it when we say 40 multiplied by 700. And then compared to the income of 22,400, which will be received when 28 is multiplied by 800. So at the price of 40, the revenue will be 28,000 compared to the 22,400. So the firm will be losing its profits or revenues if ever it decreases the price. That's why firms will be reluctant. And then we continue. This is another data response. Remember, also, it is very important for you to know the following. Firms under oligopoly always avoid over the price because they avoid the price war. They don't want to compete over the price. They rather use what we call the non-price competition strategies so that they can compete effectively. But pricing, no, because they avoid the price war. Here you are given the graph. As you are given the graph, start the graph below and answer questions that follow. This graph is under monopoly. We talk about total revenues maximization here. You can see that you have your P and P1. Then our total revenue is maximized at P and Q. In that situation, that's the highest point of total revenues. As it slopes down, that means total revenues will have been maximized. So we check. Mention the imperfect market structure illustrated above. It's a monopoly. We know and we see. Identify the total revenue maximization price. That's P in there. And then briefly describe the term marginal revenues. Marginal revenues refer to the revenues earned after selling an extra additional unit. It is also important that you are able to calculate what we call marginal revenues. Remember, we say MR as for marginal revenue equals to, it will be the change in what we call, so the change in price over the change in what we call in the quantity. So be able to calculate, and always use this change in there if you calculate. We don't just take the amount as it is. We look at the change where we subtract. You might come across the table given to you, a special under perfect market, where you provide, you are provided with numbers as for total revenues, marginal revenues, total cost, marginal cost. Then you have to answer questions and calculate. So it is important for you to be able to calculate all revenues and cost as you were given in your grade 11 and also grade 12. So we continue. How is the equilibrium position for the above firm in the short run and the long run? Remember, the monopoly will face the following. The equilibrium position for the above firm remains fixed. It does not change because the firm has a control over the price. In the long run and short run, that E on your graph remain the same. It does not change position like in the perfect market. Why does the average cost curve lie below the average revenue curve under the imperfect market? Remember, under imperfect market, I will be specific on the monopoly. MR lies below AR. They start at the same point. They are equal at the beginning. They are both equal at the beginning. They're on your top left. As they go downward or slope downward, they split in between. Why that happens? Remember, AR cannot be zero if the firm is still producing something, but MR can be zero while the firm is producing something. MR can even decrease to be below even zero by becoming negative. But AR cannot be negative or cannot be zero if the firm is still producing something. So for that reason, AR will always be above MR. Also, the firm under the monopoly will always increase the price to decrease the output. By doing so, then decrease your total, your marginal revenues. And the firm will always increase the price to decrease output. So as the firm increases the price, the output will be decreasing. As the firm decreases the price, output will be increasing. That will lower your marginal revenues. So imperfect market structures such as monopoly, oligopoly, and monopolistic have influence or control over the price. They increase prices to decrease the output and decrease prices to increase the output. That lowers what we call the marginal revenues. Giving data response again, it's on inflation. South African CPI between 21 and 2022. South African Consumer Price Index CPI increased from the average of 97.5% in the financial year of 2021 to 104.2% in the financial year of 2022. This 6.7% increase in consumer 6.7 increase in the consumer price index was a result of depreciated currency, fuel cost increase, and low productivity, source test SA. So let's check the questions in now. Identify the type of inflation associated with the increase in fuel prices. It's a cost push inflation or supply inflation. Name the one way in which inflation is measured. It is measured through the indexes, which can be CPI and PPI, measured through weighting, where we compare the product and their value, and then measured through inflation rate, where we calculate inflation rate. Briefly describe the term core inflation. A core inflation excludes items from the basket, from the CPI basket that have highly volatile prices and items with prices affected by government intervention and policy. Then we continue with data response. Why should the wage rate be determined at the same or higher rate than average consumer price index? Remember, it is very important that the wage rate increase further than inflation or at the same rate, so that living standard for people or workers is not undermined. Workers must enjoy better or same sort of living. Workers should be able to afford basic goods. They should have enough money to satisfy their needs and wants. Questions the effect of inflation, which could reduce disposable income. The real wage increases to keep track with the cost of living. And then remember that as inflation increases, the buying power rate of money will be decreasing. So, meaning people will be affording less goods and services. So, it is therefore important for increased inflation to be accompanied by the increase in wages at the higher rate or at the same rate. Calculate inflation rate for 2022. Show all calculations. Inflation rate equal to CPI for the current year minus CPI for previous year divided by CPI for previous year multiplied by 100. Remember, you get marks for providing that formula. So it's 104,2 minus 97,5 divided by 97,5 multiplied by 100. So remember, this is our current year minus previous year divided by previous year multiplied by 100. And then we get inflation rate of 6.87% or equal to 7%. This inflation requires much intervention from Reserve Bank and the government because it's above inflation target of between 3 to 6%. Then we have a general response again on our tourism. Weak rand can benefit South Africa's tourism. So the general response, South Africa's currency has reached its lowest level since 2001. This is great news for international tourists. Remember, as we go outside and they come in outbound and inbound, who can take advantage of of a very favorable exchange rate to visit South Africa. Remember also, if ever our exchange rate or currency is weak, that will mean foreign tourists can find it more easier to tour to South Africa because their currency will be weighting more than our currency. So they can come in anytime because it will be affordable to be in South Africa. Now, more than ever, South Africa offers the great value of money and has become one of the greatest holiday destinations for international travelers. So there are so many attractions available in the country. South Africa offers vacation options to suit every pocket and taste. Travelers are truly spoiled for choice from hotel, safari lodge accommodation, restaurant offering local and national cuisine, access to the big five, wildlife, and spectacular breathtaking scenery. So these are some of the things that are offered in South Africa, which are mostly attractions that bring more tourists to come in. They encourage them to keep on coming back into the country. Also, remember the weak currency. If we have our currency being weak compared to their currency, they will find it more affordable to tour to the country. Identify one good or service on which tourists can spend money in South Africa as from the extract. Hotel and lodge accommodation, restaurant services, big five viewing. What is the name of the currency used in South Africa? Obviously, that is a rand. And then briefly describe the term ecotourism. So ecotourism occurs when the tourists visit the place to observe the beauty of nature. Remember to know the definition for transit tourists because it's been coming in the examination and we have been finding it difficult to define it. And then how does the weak rand affect South African tourists? Outbound tourism will be more expensive, which will decrease outflow of domestic tourists. So our domestic tourists will find it difficult to go out because our currency will be weak. So foreign currencies will be expensive. South African currency is detrimental to outbound tourism. This therefore increase the domestic tourism. So people decide to tour within. Instead, it attracts more foreign tourists to come in if their currency is stronger compared to South African. How can an increase in tourism negatively affect environment? So I think this one has been answered before. Increase in one place increase environmental stress, and then also tourism activities have negative effect on environment if tourists leave their what we call carbon footprints. They pollute and also they steal some of plants in there. And then increase in tourism result in high prices for local people. We know we have discussed that one to say as there's a tourism destination in the area, local people are affected by high prices because businesses decide to increase their prices so that they can get more revenues, which also affect the local people. The snow shuts down South African business road. And then that's another extract or data response. The Andre Road is one of the South Africa's main highway transporting goods and services from the port city of Durban. The road is one of the busiest road freight corridor in the country, on which millions of tons and cargo are transported. It experienced a historical closure in September 2024 due to climate change. So you remember this one. So let's check out the question. We are under environmental sustainability. Identify the internal problem of environmental sustainability from the above extract. That's a climate change. Which international protocol was agreed upon reducing greenhouse gases into the environment? United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And then also briefly describe the term pollution. Pollution is the disposal of toxic material into the environment. Then we continue. How does the continuous change unpredictable change in weather patterns negatively affect food security in South Africa. Agriculture and farming experience death and erosion of crops, while there is a death of livestock. This threatens food security and result to less market supply. That will also cause the cost push inflation. How did the September snow negatively affect the market? The closure of the N3 road stopped the distribution process of goods and services between Gauteng, Mpumalanga, Free State, Eastern Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal. It caused more than 72 hours pause of economic activities in all economic sectors, which resulted to industries losing what you call loses in affected areas. So they experienced some losses in there. They lost a lot because they had to close for about 72 hours. Exports from Gauteng channel through Durban port were delayed. And then we move to what we call the 8 months questions now. With the time, I will also be quick. Remember, in data response, it is very important for you to understand data response given to you before you attempt to answer questions. Also check, do not copy the extract when it's unnecessary. You only have the maximum of 2 marks that you can obtain from the extract, where you identify or mention. Other than that, other content is your content knowledge and it requires application when you go further to the last 6 marks, 2 and 4. So briefly explain reasons for cost-benefit analysis, meaning why the government conducts CBA. In public sector projects, there are no market signals to guide decision making, e.g., roads and bridges, if ever they have to manufacture to be created. To identify all relevant benefits and costs related to the project before an informed decision is made, it is very important. To ensure economic efficiency in resource allocation, to include the wider social impact and include also externalities in the decision-making process to estimate the effect of investment on social welfare and environment. Remember, when we do CPA, we consider the NPV and NFV. The NPV is a net present value, where we'll focus on the current exchange rate, current inflation rate, and current interest rate. And then on the net future value, we look at the project. How long will the project last? If ever the project will last for the period of 25 years, then there must be projections in there on the net future value where we consider the future interest rate, future exchange rate, as well as future future inflation rate. Then the decision can be made on the project. So be aware of that. To bring a greater objectivity to decision making, to avoid subjectivity. That's why we have the CPA. We'll continue with 8 months question. Analyze the behavior of different role players in the economy during high inflationary expectations. If ever businesses are expecting more inflation, if ever consumers are expecting more inflation, if ever the government is expecting more inflation, if investors or savers are expecting more inflation, what do they do? How do they behave? If they expect less inflation, how do they behave? This is a psychological influence we talk about under consequence of market failure. So let's check. High inflation expectation affect decision making by all economic role players as they try to protect the buying power of money. They want to keep their money affording more goods and services. So they must always react if they expect more inflation. Consumers or households immediately increase their spending while their income can still afford more goods and services. That means they're trying to avoid their money losing buying power. So there will be a panic spending if consumers are expecting a high inflation. So they can also postpone their spending to future to ensure that their buying power of money is not affected that much. Producers or business produce more goods and services now while the inputs or cost of production is still affordable and cheap. They can also increase selling prices to keep up with high profits as they to compensate themselves for future losses during high level of the inflation. So this can this can also be a part of what we call the fuel inflation. If ever we expect fuel to what do? We spend now. We ensure that we buy more now. However, we know that even in future we'll have the same problem of fuel increasing. So there can be the panic spending by what we call by consumers. They buy more goods and services now, or they can save for future, saving the buying power of their money. What about the government? If ever the government expect inflation to increase, the government intervene by using relevant policy measures to ensure that inflation is prevented and avoided by limiting money supply. And then we continue. Trade unions will start negotiating or bargaining to better wages and salaries with the employers to ensure that their members are not facing undermined standard of living so that they can enjoy the better living, even if inflation is high. This may lead to industrial instabilities if wage negotiation do not bring the mutual benefit. The government, through Reserve Bank, intervened by increasing repurchase rate to reduce money supply and curb spending by both consumers and businesses in the economy. Differentiate between conservation and preservation 8 marks. Remember, whenever you give the difference, you must use conjunctions lately. You don't just discuss, use conjunctions, or you also provide, you can also use the table form to make it easy. So ensure that your differences are matching each other so that you can mark correctly. Conservation deal with the sustainable use of and management of natural resources to ensure that they are available even for use by future generations. Conservation aims to create a continuity of the environment while ensuring that change is sympathetic to the quality of life. Human activities affect the environment not only because they cause pollution, but also because they tend to overutilize resources. Then we continue with the same question. Preservation. Preservation concerns elements of environment that are threatened to extinction. So those resources that can be completed if ever they are not used in a sustainable manner. Preservation aims to protect and maintain these elements in their present condition. So they must remain intact so that even future generations can be able to obtain the same benefit that we are enjoying now. The weaknesses in the market solution requires government to intervene to preserve environmental assets through buying or expropriation, subsidizing, and control. And to preserve biodiversity. Remember, if we talk about biodiversity, we talk about both flora and fauna, living and non-living things that we interact with in the environment. Then we continue briefly discuss overt collusion and tacit collusion. So I think this one has been discussed before. It is when oligopolies collude openly or formally through cartels. That one is an overt collusion, or what we call the explicit. Cartel is the association of oligopolies businesses that comes into existence in the industry with the specific aim of forming collective monopoly. Cartels control the production of goods and services. This influences the prices of products. Overt or explicit collusion pertains formal agreement between businesses within the pure oligopoly. Remember, if we talk about the pure oligopoly, we refer to the oligopolies that produce and sell homogeneous products. And then there is also differentiated oligopoly, which is the oligopoly that exists when the firm is selling differentiated products. Remember, we also have duopoly, which exists when two firms dominate the industry. Then we continue. The tacit or implicit behavior by firms is motivated by arrangement that is not formal or unspoken actions. Tacit or implicit collusion occurs through the price leadership process. And then we continue. It does not include any formal agreement between firms, so they don't meet and discuss, like I mentioned before. But firms will be copying each other's decision based on the price leadership. Price leaders are usually the strongest and most dominant businesses, those whose production cost is at the lowest, but can also be firms that understand market signals very well without sales dominance. And then here you are given the question with the aid of net level graph. With the aid of the graph production possibility curve, explain how productive and allocative inefficiencies can be achieved in the market. Remember, in this situation, we have PPC that indicate the production of goods and services within the market. And then in this case, we have point E inside and point F outside, and then we have points along the PPC. So we have drawn a graph, and then let's check. The point inside the PPC indicate that resources are not allocated efficiently. So it will lead to productive inefficiency. The point outside, which is point F, is not attainable or not achievable or unattainable. And then the point there, point B, is allocative efficient and productive efficient. So in this situation, we know that any point along the PPC indicates that there is a productive efficient. But the point B in there, where it's tangent to what we call indifferent curve, which is IC, it indicates allocative efficiency in there. Productive efficiency can be achieved if the market produces at any point along the PPC, that is at any point between A to D. Allocative efficiency can be achieved when the indifferent curve is tangent to the PPC. That is the point I've just mentioned. And then we continue. This occurs at point B of the graph. So remember, you can be given PPC as data response. You must be able to answer questions. That's one of the enjoyable questions you can come across tomorrow. Individual producer perfect market. So in this case, with the aid of a graph, explain why marginal cost must be equal to marginal revenue for the profit to be maximized. In this situation, we use MR and MC to maximize the profit. Remember, we have our demand curve here, which is MR is to P is to D. So in that situation, that means that this is our revenues. It can be maybe 16. And then remember, any point below our what we call MR means the firm is making economic profit because revenues are more than the cost. But any point above MR, that means the firm is making economic loss because costs are more than revenues. But this point here, the point along, is the profit maximization point where MC equals to MR. Explanation: in the above graph, the market price is fixed at 80. If MR is less than MC, profits will decrease, and if MR is more than MC, profits will increase. The individual producer cannot adjust the price, and as he must adjust in line with the industry or competition. So profit maximization occurs where MR equal to MC, or if MR equals to MC, then marginal profit equals to 0. So the firm will only maximize the profit where marginal revenues is equal to marginal cost in the according to the graph given to you. Remember, we also have the graph where we maximize profit using TR and TC. Evaluate the success of Commission Policy Act of South Africa. So how successful has it been on achieving its objectives? It's been very much successful. Provides consumers with competitive prices and a variety of product, e.g. Vodacom and MTN. DSTV has been found guilty of price fixing and fined 180 million by the Commission Tribunal, by the way. Tiger Brands was fined 8 million for collusion in the mining industry. Banks face the market fines for fixing the fixing the exchange rate or through the collusion or price fixing. And then we continue with the success. Fruit and vegetable producer fined for price fixing and collusion, encourage South Africans to participate in the world market and accept the foreign competition. Enables SMMEs, small, micro, and medium enterprises, to participate in the economy. Enables previous disadvantaged groups or people to increase their ownership in the business sector. And then we continue. Various anti-competitive practices have been investigated with positive outcomes. So firms have been found guilty and they've been fined. And it's managed to establish 3 commission bodies, namely Commission Tribunal, as well as the Commission Appeals Court. Currently, a number of big insurance companies in South Africa are under investigation over being alleged of fixing their premiums. And then we continue. We look at the failures. So fines imposed on firms has been too lenient, which has resulted to firms continuing with their anti-competitive behavior or restrictive practices. It has failed to protect consumers over aggressive prices. Prices have been detrimental to economic growth and development over the past few years. State-owned monopolies remain as the main suppliers of some products such as electricity, which has contributed to high level of productive inefficiency and allocative inefficiency, and has also resulted to undersupply of goods and services. Then also this thing of monopolies has also led to withdrawal of investment by foreign investors from South Africa. How can the market be a solution to a reduction of greenhouse emissions or gases? That's environmental sustainability. The market can use both renewable and non-renewable resources in sustainable manner without distracting it. It can invest in eco-friendly or environmental-friendly machines that are less harmful into the environment. Then we continue. Businesses can reuse material, meaning they can recycle. They can reuse materials such as cardboards, plastics, and bottles, as well as chemicals, instead of disposing them into the environment to cause both chemical waste and hazardous waste. The burning of fossil fuel can be reduced in the automotive market by investing on electrical vehicles. And then we move to the section C. So we'll check on the short training in there on how you can write an essay. I believe you understand how you can write an essay now after the long conversation we had last week. Essay must be written in subheadings and then use point forms rather than paragraph. Remember IMAC, which is introduction, main part, original part, as well as conclusion to write your essay. Remember 8 is to 18 principle, whereby the main part, main part is 18 marks, it's 26 marks, but then we have your 8 marks for listing subheadings and 18 marks for discussing the content. Then we'll continue with the essay writing principles. Be aware that listing in the original part can give you maximum of 2 marks, so do not list, answer in full sentences. Ensure that responses you provide are enough to secure maximum marks. And then arrange your essay in point form. Your conclusion should not be a form of any repetition in your essay from introduction, main part, or original part must be the higher order response without any repetition. And then essay conclusion must be at the higher order. It can also integrate both main part and original part, or can only be a part of main part or original part, as long as your essay is there being higher order, not repeating any information and being correct and relevant, then you will be getting marks in there. And then the essay structure as usual. We know that we have our introduction where you define the relevant concept for 2 marks. You don't provide example. You don't also tell us that in this essay I will discuss this and that. No, we don't do that. And then we go further. At the body, we have main part as well as additional part. Remember, on the body, that's where you discuss your content for 26 marks in detail. You arrange your essay in subheadings, and then you ensure that you provide full facts on each subheading in point form. And then your original part will be 10 marks, and then ensure that you answer in full sentences, the minimum of 5 points in full. Ensure that you answer in full sentence. You don't list, because should you list, you will only be getting only 2 marks if that listing is even correct. And then conclusion must be the higher order without repeating anything mentioned in the body or in introduction or original part. Ensure that your higher order, there's a higher order response for 2 marks. Then that will be giving you 40 marks in your essay. And then we continue. These are the essays for microeconomics that we are all already aware of as for your examination guideline. Discussing detailed various equilibrium positions with the aid of graphs. That's when you discuss your perfect market now. We'll discuss the normal profit, economic profit, and economic loss under the perfect market. And then discuss the monopoly in detail with or without graphs. That's when now the examiner can ask you to discuss the monopoly in detail in a form of market structure or characteristics, or the examiner can ask you to discuss in detail 2 equilibrium positions for the firm under the perfect market, where you draw your graphs for economic loss and economic profit. Examine the oligopoly in detail. That's when the examiner requires you to discuss the behavior of oligopoly in detail, as you discuss characteristics and the market interdependence, where you will also be concerned or including what we call the King demand curve under the oligopoly. Compare and contrast any 2 types of market structures, perfect to imperfect or imperfect to the perfect. That's when now you compare market structures or within the market. You can compare perfect market to the monopoly, monopoly to the monopolistic, monopolistic to the oligopoly. That's when you deal with the market structures. And then discuss in detail how the following factors or reasons for market failure can lead to the misallocation of resources. In this situation, you discuss factors that can lead to the misallocation of resources. Be aware the examiner can ask you in this fashion, discuss in detail reasons for the market failure or factors that can lead to misallocation of resources in the market. In that situation, we talk about missing markets, we talk about what we call immobility of factor production, we talk about lack of information, imperfect market structure, etc. So those are some of the subheading I can give you as you discuss your what we call your reasons for the market failure. And then discuss in detail, then we check discuss in detail state intervention as a consequence of market failure with or without graphs. So in this situation, you need to discuss with graphs if ever you're required to draw graphs. If you are not required, if they say without graphs, you simply discuss the content. So this is one of essay I think we have on our exemplars there. Economic issues. Team Micro, you know your essays, ensure that you understand them all, you do them all so that you can choose your question 5. And then team contemporary economic issues. Here we are, these are your essays. Discussing detailed consequences of inflation. So in this situation, you know what to do. We have about 9 consequences from from taxpayers to debtors, creditors, psychological influence, poverty and unemployment, etc. So be aware of such. And then discussing detailed measures to combat inflation. That's when you deal with monetary measures fiscal measures and other measures to ensure that inflation is the problem of the past. And then we go further, examine in detail effects of tourism. So in this situation, you discuss how does the tourism affect some economic stakeholders. Then you can discuss that one. Discuss in detail benefits of tourism. How can the tourism benefit? What is it? And what is it? Can be GDP, economic growth, employment, etc. Discuss that one in detail if given an opportunity to do so. Discuss in detail how the government can ensure sustainable development. In that situation, that's when you deal with the likes of issuing property rights, marketable permits, property rights, also marketable permits. We talk about command and control policies. We talk about the likes of environmental taxes, environmental subsidies, voluntary agreements, etc. Be able to discuss such in an essay if we are team economic issues. Discuss in detail the following problems and the internal measures taken to ensure sustainable development. In this situation, we refer to the likes of loss of biodiversity, indigenous knowledge loss, hazardous waste, chemical waste, as well as the climate change. These are your essays. Remember, tomorrow there will only be 2 essays in your examination. There will be 1 essay for question 5. Out of those 6 questions or 6 essays I've mentioned above, there will only be 1 essay. And then also under economic issues, 1 essay will come. You have a choice. You just choose one. And these essays are not that much dangerous compared to those of your paper 1. So I believe if you have done your micro thoroughly, you know you have question 5 in your pocket. If you have done your communal economic issues thoroughly, we have your economic issues. Or you have done both. So bravo to you. You have done very well. Good luck for tomorrow. Then we'll continue. So in this situation, I just want to highlight to you, if ever you come across the essay where you discuss the perfect market, equilibrium position for the perfect market, remember, you must be able to explain conditions for the profit, loss, and normal profit. So the first thing you do under intro, you define your perfect market. Remember, the perfect market, the market structure that exists where there are many buyers and sellers with none of them having influence over the price. You go further to the body of your essay. You start maybe with economic profit to explain. Economic profit is economic condition that occurs when the firm's revenues exceed the cost that incurred in the business. It can be total revenues are more than total cost, or average revenues are more than average cost. That means the firm is enjoying economic profit. For the firm to enjoy economic profit or supernormal profit or abnormal profit, that means the average cost curve must turn above the average revenues. That means the firm is making economic profit. So how do you go about drawing the graphs? If you write the heading, ensure that your heading is correct. Maybe you say economic profit. Then you draw your graph, then you write quantity or output. And then you have your cost and revenues or revenues. That is 0. Then your AR equals to MR equals to D. And then there is your MC given to you. Your MC is there. And then we want the profit. Then that means our AC is 10 billion there. Then we have our connection there. Maybe it's 20, it's 40, and then this is 10. We shade the area. Then we indicate economic profit. Now you interpret your graph. Do not lie in there. If you interpret your graph, you deal with what is given in the graph. You tell us that the point here, it can be point E. Point E is the profit maximization point because MC equals to MR. And then you go further to say shaded area indicates economic profit. Then you go further to tell us that, the AC equals to 20, and then AR equals to 40. So the 40 is the profit maximization price, and 10 is profit maximization output. Then you continue. Then let's say now you talk about economic loss. You will indicate economic loss. Explain it. Economic loss is the economic condition that occurs when the firm's revenues, firm's total costs exceed total revenues, or average cost exceed average revenues. So that means income earned by the business is lower than the expenses that incurred in the business. So for the firm to experience economic loss, average cost curve must turn above the average revenues curve. And then you draw your graph again. Do the same. AR is to MR is to D, and then you have your output, and then you have your cost or revenues, and then you have the amount, maybe is 200 there. And those are revenues, and then there is your everything begins 0, by the way. There is your MC, and then obviously you will have your your AC turning above. That is your AC being a bowl shape, and then there is a box there, goes down. This is maybe 20. and our costs are 600. In that case, you can see that your cost, the turning point of your AC is just above the AR. This is point E. So if our AC is 600, while our AR is 200, the firm is making economic loss because costs incurred in the business are more than revenues earned by the business. The firm only received 200, but the cost for the business are about 600. So that is economic loss. Then you interpret your graph. E is a loss minimization point where MR equals to MC. They are equal. And then shaded area indicates economic loss. And then you continue. So be able to draw such and give the theory in there. And then maybe we also have, we come across, maybe we have to draw maybe normal profit. Let's go there. The normal profit. Okay. So, okay. Maybe if we have a normal profit, obviously you will indicate that as for the normal profit occurs when the firm revenues are equal to the cost incurred in the business. This will happen under conditions where total revenues are equal to total cost, or average revenues are equal to the what we call average cost. For the firm to make normal profit, that means average cost curve must turn along the average revenues curve. So this is regarded as minimum earning that prevent the firm from leaving the market. So we call this one the break even, because the firm is breaking even. It is not making a profit, neither a loss. After that, you draw your graph and then you do your interpretation. All right, then let's check the micro example. What is being said here? Discussing detailed monopoly with or without graphs. So in this situation, we have just clustered everything because we don't know how it can come out if it comes tomorrow. With or without graphs, graphs will be drawn under this essay here. Let's check your question 5 possibility. Evaluate the impact of imperfect markets in the economy. Then let's go. Introduction. We define monopoly, obviously. Monopoly is the imperfect market structure that exists when there is only one seller of unique product and many buyers. Then we continue. Any correct definition is given 2 marks in there if it's worth 2 marks. Then in this case, we say there are many buyers and one seller. Obvious, under monopoly, there are many buyers and one seller. So there's no competition as only single seller exists in the market. That gives you 2 marks. One seller completely controls the supply of goods and services to the entire market. Business, because the monopoly is the only supplier of the product in the market. Its demand curve represent individual firm and the entire market. Remember, the demand curve for the monopoly represent itself as a firm as well as the industry or the market, because there is only one firm that is existing in the market, unlike under what we call under the perfect market. So, for example, De Beers is the only diamond seller and represent the total diamond industry, while ESCOM is the only supplier of electricity, and the demand curve for the ESCOM indicate or represent represent the industry for electricity as well as the company ESCOM. And then products are heterogeneous, meaning those products are unique. Heterogeneous products are unique without any close substitutes. So meaning they cannot easily be replaced. If consumers cannot find the product in the single supplier, they go without the product. And then this leaves consumers with no choice based on selling price, quality, and the supplier. They have to buy from that only supplier available. Consumers therefore develop dependence on the product sold by this monopoly because they don't have any perfect substitute. The firm is a price setter. So under the monopoly, firms are having the control over the price. Monopoly firms are price setters because they have a control over the price or influence over the price. And then monopolies always increase their prices to decrease the output and decrease the price to increase the output. This means that increased prices result to less units of the product sold, while reduced prices result to high units of the product being sold. As much as the monopoly has the control over the price, it does not have control over the demand. The demand is therefore necessary for the firm to determine the price. And then also, we continue. So it is faced by the downward sloping demand curve. So the monopoly firm And the monopoly firm and the market are represented by the downward sloping demand curve. The demand curve is downward sloping, meaning it's sloped from the top left to the bottom right. But the demand curve is relatively inelastic because consumers are not sensitive to the change in price because they don't have any perfect substitute under the monopoly. The demand curve for the monopoly firms slope downward because the firm is a price setter. It can increase the price to reduce the output size and decrease the price to increase the output size. The monopoly demand curve is relatively inelastic. This happens because product produced are unique and the market entry is blocked, so there are no substitutes available in there. The increase in the price does not affect the quantity demanded much, which means that the demand for the product is relatively inelastic even if the price is increasing. There are high barriers to entry. So the market entry is completely blocked. New firms are not allowed to enter the market by both the natural barriers to entry as well as artificial barriers to entry. And then the market is protected by high barriers to entry, which prohibit the entry of new businesses. Those are obstacles. Barriers to entry, such as patents, high startup costs, licensing, copyrights, and economies of scale, make it hard for new businesses to enter the market. As a result, competition does not exist in the market if the firm is a pure monopoly. No consumer choice. Remember, under the monopoly, consumers are not present by any choice. So that means if ever the consumer is not willing to buy from the monopoly, it goes without the product. So the market does not provide any alternative product for consumers. Consumers may demand from existing firms or go without the product. Since the product is not easily replaceable, the failure for the market to supply the product results in unavailability in the market. So that is inefficiency. Efficiencies are not achieved. The market output is relatively small, caused by no competition. So if only one firm is responsible to supply the whole market for electricity, that means there will be some inefficiencies that will exist in the market. Since the firm is the only supplier of a unique product for the entire market, inefficiencies occur which result to undersupply of the product. For instance, Eskom is the only supplier of electricity in South Africa. Technical problems in this monopoly result to power supply reduction. Productive efficiency is possible in a monopoly, but generally unlikely because there is no incentive for the firm to improve efficiency. Why we say that? We are saying that because as the firm does not face any competition, then there is no incentive for the firm to improve its doings or quality or the quantity of goods because the firm does not have anything that is pushing it as a competitor. Allocative inefficiency occur in the monopoly. Firm is unable to if the firm is unable to supply at the optimum quantity of goods and services as desired by consumers. Also, productive will occur when the firm is unable to provide goods at the right time, right quality, and right quantity and right quality. And then we continue. The firm will enjoy both supernormal profit. Will enjoy supernormal profit in both short run and long run. So monopolist firm can make supernormal profit or economic profit or abnormal profit in both the short run and long run. Remember, if we talk about the short run, we refer to the short period at which at least one input is fixed. And then if we talk about the long run, we refer to the period of time at which all inputs are flexible. And then this market condition can prevail if the average revenues of the firm exceed average cost or when total revenues are more than total cost incurred in the business. The entire market share belongs to one firm. However, if ever average revenues are lower than average cost, then the firm can have economic loss. If the firm average costs exceed average revenues, total costs exceed total costs, the firm can make economic loss. And then let's check. Let's say they say the examiner said to you discuss in detail with the 8 graphs. So you check. You must be able to explain economic profit condition like I did in a perfect market, and you draw your graph. Let's say we deal with economic profit. Then you must be able to draw your graphs. That is output, cost, and revenue. Then it's 0 there. We have our downward sloping demand curve, which is AR is to D, and then we have our MR sloping there and cut our horizontal axis in the middle. That is MR. And then we have our MC in there. There is MC. And then we want to make a profit. Then we do this. These are our revenues. And then maybe we do this. This is 10 as our cost. This is 100 as our revenues. Then we draw our AC curve. Our AC curve will obviously 10 here. We have our AC. It turns at this point. You shade the area. As you shade the area, then you indicate this is your economic profit. Then you interpret your graph to say this is point E, where MR equals to what we call MC. That's a profit maximization point, and shaded area indicates economic profit. And then our costs are equals to 10, revenues are equals to 100. AC is 10, AR is 100. And then maybe you have to draw economic loss. Then you do it, you explain the economic loss condition, then you draw the graph. This is the output or quantity, and then that is your cost or revenue. Remember, you can also say the price, it's 0 there, and then you have your AR is to D, and then you have your MR. And then there we go, we connect the, our revenues are equals to maybe, we say maybe they are 20, and then you have your upper box, and then that means there is a box, then maybe it's 40. Then remember, you have your MC in there. That is your MC, and then your AC is turning in the above. Then that means that is economic loss, because your revenues are equals to 20, your costs are equals to 40. Then the firm is making economic loss. There is point E here, which indicate loss minimization point. So be able to do such so that you can get your marks in any way if ever questions are coming in. In case you come across maybe you have to draw the normal profit, you do the same, the output, and then you have cost and revenues, and then that is 0. So as usual, you have your AR. Remember, it must not touch your horizontal axis, and then you have your MR. So this is to D, and then there you go, and then we have 60 in there. We have your MC going down, that is your MC, and then your AC is crossing over there, that is your AC. Where does it tend? It tends along the AR. That means the firm is making a profit. It's not making a profit, neither a loss. I mean, the firm is breaking even. This is a normal profit that can be enjoyed by the firm under the monopoly if its revenues are equal to the cost incurred in the business. And then let's check. We continue with the say under monopoly. We say there are high prices. So monopolies exploit consumers with high prices. Fewer products are made available at the higher cost because there is no competition. Monopolies firms easily ask higher prices because it does not have competitors. Remember, I mentioned that they charge their price above the marginal cost. This results in product made available for only those who can afford, while disadvantaged cannot access them. And then complete information. Remember, under monopoly, a business does not have any incentive for hiding information because it does not have any competitor. So buyers and sellers have access to full information about the prevailing market conditions. Monopoly has high degree of transparency as there is no incentive to hide information. Then asymmetric information does not exist in the monopoly. Buyers and sellers have common information about market condition. And then there is no collusion. Remember, if the firm is the only supplier, there is no collusion. So collusion is impossible because the firm is the only supplier. So collusion is an illegal and uncommitted practice that occurs when two or more firms in the same industry are active dependently or implicitly or explicitly to manipulate the conditions of the market. So under the entire market is dominated by a single supplier without rivals. So collusion does not exist since there are no competitors. So additional part, the impact of imperfect markets in the economy, control over the price result to consumers, exploitation to higher prices, less or minimum consumer choices compromises social welfare, barriers to entry and less market competition decrease efficiency, innovation, and quality of goods and services. Imperfect market information result to buyers making improper economic decisions and make market less accessible to new entrants, and then collusive behavior by oligopolies through illegal measures and price fixing, limit competition and compromise consumer freedom of choice. And then we continue with the additional part. Market share competition result to anti-competitive practice by some businesses to win consumer interest. Less output size by monopolies and oligopolies prevent opportunities for employment, internal competitiveness, as well as economic growth. Government intervention in monopolies prevents economic efficiency and foreign investments. That gives you 10 marks. Then you go to the conclusion, which will be the higher order. Conclusion for 2 marks. Monopolies are unable to produce goods and services at the right time, right quantity, and right quality. And that has increased the functionality of the black market. 2 marks. Then you have your 40 marks. Let's see another example. So this one I will be very quickly discussing detailed state intervention as a consequence of market failure. That is still micro. Team micro, I'm with you here. Examine the impact of economic inequality in the economy. So let's check. We start with the introduction. So market failure occurs when the market is unable to achieve the efficient allocation of resources and is therefore not able to achieve the best available outcome. Market failure occurs when the market misallocates resources resulting to undersupply or oversupply of goods and services. So under direct control, we are listing now. The government uses legislation, laws, and regulations as intervention to restrict the production of goods and services that have negative externalities. To restrict overconsumption, the state legislate laws that directly limit businesses from making the provision of those goods and services. In South Africa, tobacco advertising is prohibited. And then we continue. Tobacco producers are forced to make the provision of its negative effect on the packaging so that consumers will buy being fully informed. Regulation for advertising exists to prevent the false claims and deceptive advertising. And then we continue with direct control. Selling unprescribed and illegal drugs is prohibited in South Africa. With regards to imperfect information, the government requires business to disclose information about their operations on the packaging or on the web page. Information should be made available on the packaging of the product or the web page of the business. This information should be based on the product dosage, ingredients, as well as allergens. Public awareness is made on alcohol as it's being restricted to be sold to children under the age of 18. That's a part of direct control. Motorists are not allowed to have a certain percentage of alcohol in their bodies while they are driving. That's a part of regulation. According to South African law, drinking and driving is prohibited. That's a part of also direct control by the government. And then it continues. In other instances, government requires firms products to meet certain standards. E.g., cars must satisfy certain safety standards set by the government for them to be in the market. The SAPS regulates standards in South Africa. All firms must produce goods that meet the certain health standard, safety, and quality. If the product does not meet SAPS prescribed standards, it cannot be allowed in the market. Imperfect market. Producers are motivated to maximize profits which occur in the expense of the consumers. We know that. And then also as we continue. Okay, firms restrict output to increase their prices, use licensing and patents to restrict competition as given by the government. And then other firms withhold information to maintain market dominance, while others use aggressive advertising to drive other competitors out of the market, making their goods appear more superior than those of the competitors. And then we continue. Collusion by oligopolies reduce competition and keep prices high as competitors engage in price fixing. That's also a bad thing under imperfect market. Monopolies use their dominant position and market power to solely control the supply of unique products. To prevent the above practices, the government introduced the Commission Policy Act of South Africa of 1998 to promote healthy competition and market efficiency. And then we continue with the imperfect market. Commission Policy Act aims at prohibiting anti-competitive behavior between competitors, firms, and their consumer or suppliers. And then 3 commission bodies, such as Commission Tribunal, as well as Commission Appeals Court, were formed to ensure that there is a fair competition in the market. Commission bodies are used to evaluate measures and investigate any alleged restrictive market practices or anti-competitive behavior by businesses. They impose fines on competitors if found guilty of misconduct. And then minimum wage. So remember, minimum wage refers to the lowest wage or least amount of money that no worker should be paid below in the particular industry. And then when the minimum wage has been legislated, no worker should be paid below that prescribed wage level. And then industries affected by minimum wage in South Africa include the agricultural industry, domestic workers, also it includes EPWP workers. The minimum wage is established by the government to prevent workers from being exploited by employers over lower wages and salaries. And then we continue. It is a mechanism used to reduce economic inequalities that exist between the economic participants. So the establishment of minimum wages result to poverty relief and decent standard of living for citizens in the country. It improves economic participation for marginalized people in the and increase the demand for goods and services because they can easily participate in economic mainstream and in the market by demanding goods and services. State tax revenues is also affected positively by minimum wages because direct spending by consumers on goods and services is also taxed. Also, as they spend and their tax on their spending. Also, the direct tax can also be increased because their income will be at least higher if ever it meets standards to be taxable. We continue with the minimum wage. Domestic workers farm workers, EPW employed workers are protected by the minimum wage laws in South Africa. They are the main beneficiaries in the country. Minimum wages have some negative effects, which include retrenchment and unemployment due to high labor cost and an excess supply of workforce. So remember, we say it has some negative effect because as the minimum wage is legislated, then is higher than market rate, by the way. That can lead to firms find it very expensive to employ workers. Labor costs can increase, which can lead to retrenchments. So to keep minimum wage law functional, the state intervenes with employment subsidies to support employers that have less revenues to keep their employees on the minimum wage. It can happen that the firm is not having enough revenues to pay workers high wages. Therefore, what must be done? The state will intervene by giving them what we call employment subsidies. So we have a minimum wage graph here. If ever they say with the aid of the graph, so here is our supply, then our demand, and then there we have our market wage, which is 2,000 and the quantity, and then we have point E, which is equilibrium, and then there is our minimum wage, which is 3,500, that no worker should be paid below, and then we have our, that simply means in this situation, there is the quantity. So if ever the wage level is at the market, that means the firm will be paying each worker 2,000. 30,000 workers will be employed by this firm. But if ever the government legislates minimum wage, that will mean there will be some difficulties by the business because it will find it expensive to employ workers. There will be increase in labor costs, which will mean workers employed will be decreasing from 30,000 to 20,000. Hence, I said it can lead to unemployment. So from this point to this point, we have a labor surplus in this situation. Why we say there's a surplus of labor? It is because workers that are willing to work are 60,000, but how many workers are employed? There are 20,000. So there's a surplus of labor in the market. So minimum wage can result to labor surplus. There it is being explained. S is the supply, and then D is the demand curve, and then the market wage is 2,000, and then 30 is the number of labor force employed under market wage. 3,500 is our minimum wage. Then we continue. 3,500 result to the decline in quantity of labor demanded. From 30 to 20, we have seen that the quantity of labor supplied increased from 30 to 60, meaning that people are willing to work because they will be earning better salaries. The distance between point C and point B indicates what we call a surplus of labor. Then setting the minimum prices or price floor. Minimum price refer to prices which are set above the market equilibrium, so they are made expensive. They are the administered prices set by the government to accommodate industries to produce more of those goods and services. It's a part of motivation to businesses to produce more of those goods and services because maybe they are important for food security. And then farmers are mostly encouraged to keep up their production high through minimum prices. Government intervene to ensure that there are high enough quantities of basic foodstuffs such as maize through legislating imposing minimum prices. Minimum prices artificially increase the price of certain goods and keep suppliers within the market. They are encouraged to supply more. There is the graph indicating the minimum price. We have our demand and supply, then we connect our equilibrium there, and then that is 120, and then point E as equilibrium. There we go. We have our minimum price there, which indicates what is it? The quantity demanded there. So let's check. We have these points again. Point A and point B indicated there. You can see that if ever the state intervened by imposing minimum prices, it will be expensive for consumers to afford. So how much, according to the market, the quantity demanded is 120, but if ever there are changes, like with minimum prices, the price will be increasing, then consumers will demand relatively less. They will demand 70 units, meaning there will be oversupply of this particular product because consumers are demanding at point A, but suppliers are supplying at point B. This has a bad effect in the economy because if these goods are perishable, they can be dumped in foreign countries, which is prohibited by World Trade Organization, by the way. So it can lead to dumping into foreign countries if these goods are perishable. They can be sold at the lowest possible cost than in the country of origin. So this is our what we call the minimum price, which is our 150 there. And then explained in there, let's check. Assume the product is maize. S as the supply curve, D is the demand curve, point E is equilibrium, and then the equilibrium price is 100. You can see that is the price, which is 100 there. And then equilibrium quantity is 120, there it is. Then our equilibrium point is E. And then we continue with the explanation. 150 is a minimum price. There it is, 150 on top there. And then 7 is the new quantity. That is 7, meaning there's been decline in quantity demanded. The distance between point A and point B indicates the surplus of maize, meaning it will be oversupplied because firms are encouraged to produce more. And then maximum price. Maximum price are price set below the market price to accommodate the economically marginalized people or underprivileged people. Those are prices that are set below the market price. So the market price is high, but then they are lower to ensure that everyone can afford those goods and services. People with less disposable income face the challenge because most goods and services are out of their financial reach due to limited spending capacity. The state therefore intervened by artificially decreasing the prices of certain goods and services to make them affordable to consumers so that they can have better living standards. Basic goods such as electricity, water supply, housing, and paraffin are sold below the market price. This is done to make them accessible to consumers because they are necessary for living. Maximum price increases the demand for those affected goods and services. However, this reduces the poverty. However, if ever the government intervened by maximum prices, that will mean the businesses will be discouraged to produce those goods and services. Therefore, there will be undersupply or shortage of those goods in the market. For that reason, the state can intervene by producing those goods and services as public goods. Maximum price increase the ability of marginalized people to participate in the economy since they can afford necessities. Maximum price discourages suppliers from making provisions of those products. The supply of product tend to be lower than the demand. So there will be undersupply. This leads to shortages of goods and services and may lead to the formation of black markets. And then there's a graph that is indicating that in case you are required to draw the graph, then our demand curve, then the demand is indicated, then there will go 100 on the equilibrium price and then 150 market price. We'll go with the equilibrium. There we go. This is our maximum price or price ceiling. Then we can see it was 100 rand, but now it's how much? It's 50 rand, meaning it's more affordable. Then producers will then produce less because they are demotivated. We can see consumers are demanding 200 units at this point, but how much are producers willing to supply in this situation? They can only supply at this point, which is 100 units, meaning that they're demotivated to supply more because these goods are not giving them much profit due to the fact that the state has intervened with the maximum price. And then we see point A and point B, that distance indicate the market shortages. And then let's see the graph being explained. S demand, S is the demand curve, and DD S supply curve, DD demand curve, 100 equilibrium price 150, equilibrium quantity according to the graph. Point E is equilibrium point where we have a midpoint of SS and DD. State intervening through maximum prices decrease the price of education if it's education from 100 to 50 rand. Then the market is not willing to supply education at 50 rand, so it decides to supply less. For that reason, then we have a problem. The state must intervene by providing education as a merit good. The quantity of education supplied by the market decreased from 100, while the quantity demanded is 200. And then the excess demand prevail. The distance between point A and point B indicate the market shortage or undersupply of the product. Levying of taxes. So indirect taxes are levied on goods and services that have negative externalities, so that those external costs can be recovered. The government discourages the consumption of certain goods by increasing taxes on them, restrict their supply. These goods compromise the social welfare, hence state intervention is required. Affected goods include cigarette, alcohol, and sugar beverages. And then we have the graph in there that indicates that in case we are required to draw the graph. So I'm being quick, bear with me because time is not on my side. And then we have our graph coming up there. That is equilibrium. And then point E. After that, we have the supply declining because of the increase in indirect taxes on those goods and services. And then we have the new price. The price increased from P to P1, meaning the product becomes expensive and consumers demand less. Remember, government imposed these taxes to discourage consumers from demanding more, to make these goods expensive. And then we continue. There's a graph being explained. The demand curve and the supply curve are indicated there. And then we have point E, which is equilibrium there. And then we have P as equilibrium quantity, and Q equilibrium quantity, and P as equilibrium price. And then we go further to the explanation. levying of taxes. The increase in tax on the production of cost result to the decrease in supply of product. The supply curve shift from SS to S1. You can see the supply has shifted, and then Q1 is the new quantity, and then P1 is the new price. So the quantity has decreased, the price has increased because of the state intervening by imposing more taxes on the consumption of these goods and services. And then we have subsidies. Subsidies refer to financial aid given to producers to reduce the production cost or to increase their production for certain goods. Subsidies can be direct or indirect. Direct subsidies can be cash grants or financial aid given by the government to businesses to produce more goods and services. Indirect subsidies can be tax rebates or exemption of any benefits by the government to ensure that businesses are not faced by high cost of production. And then the introduction of subsidy result to the increase in the output produced, hence the supply. Hence the supply of that particular product. Subsidies can be used for a variety of purposes, including production, income, employment, and exports. Production subsidies lower the cost of production and increase the production level. They benefit consumers because increased supply lowers the selling prices. And then there is the graph that is indicating the subsidy. Okay, then we have our demand curve. There we have our equilibrium being connected in there. Okay, that comes first. The new supply is coming in, and then we are connecting our points, not done. Okay, there the graph is complete in there. So we can see that the supply has increased from S to S1 because of the subsidy, resulting to people even affording more of this particular product. With the supply of the product increasing, even more quantity of goods supplied is increasing. And then we continue, that is E1. And then the graph is explained on the next slide. DD is original demand curve, and then we continue. I'll be quick. We go to the income redistribution. Methods are necessary for the economy to reduce economic inequalities. The gap between middle class and working class result to government intervention to redistribute income and wealth for marginalized people to afford basic needs. South African government has introduced many redistribution measures as mechanism to combat poverty and redress imbalances. And then the government uses progressive tax system where high income earners are taxed more than low income earners. That money can be used to finance the low income group. Taxation is the main source of income for the state. Revenues are then used to, in the state intensive expenditure, which is documented in national budget. The state expenditure includes social transfers, social services, and infrastructure development. State also create sustainable jobs opportunities for unemployed through its EPWP and other projects. Redress methods have been continuously implemented by the government as a part of economic transformation. This is done to ensure economically excluded people can participate in the economic mainstream. The introduction of broad-based black economic empowerment has improved procurement for former marginalized groups. Employment Equity Act was legislated to promote affirmative action. Government involvement in production. Government are involved in producing goods and services themselves. Government approach to incomplete market is to intervene and supply the desired public goods and services directly. And then they raise taxes and provide the goods and services themselves. Income taxes, indirect taxes, and wealth taxes are used to pay for those goods and services. Community goods are provided free of charge, defense, police, correctional services, etc. And then we continue macroeconomic stability. If markets are free and the objective of growth, employment, price exchange stability, and equity are not achieved, the government may perceive it as market failure, then intervene. The intervention focuses on either on the demand side or supply side economy. Demand side, the Keynesians believe that government have an important stabilization function in the economy. They believe that economic stability is best achieved by intervening with appropriate economic policies. Most of the important policies are fiscal and monetary policy. Then the supply side. Sometimes the objectives are not reached because of the market rigidities. The supply side focus on capability of the economy and on policies that attempt to expand the stock of production. And then we check what was the additional part. And then a high level of economic inequalities means high level of poverty. And then poverty is associated with increased crime and poor public health, which places a burden on the economy. And then in the face of increasing food prices and lower income, support group for pro-growth government policies decline. And then also wealthy citizens remain disproportionate political power compared to poor citizens, which encourages the development of inefficient tax structures skewed in the favor of wealthy. And then We check with additional part again, we continue. Unequal income distribution increase political instability, which threaten property rights, increase the risk of state-rejected contracts. And then also a widening rich-poor gap tends to increase the rate of rent-seeking and predatory market behavior. And then we continue growth in suppress in economically unequal society by decreasing availability of investments for human capital. And then that was only for 10 months. And then we go for conclusion. Let's check what is the conclusion. Market inefficiencies can result to government intervention to produce goods and services that are undersupplied in the market, as they are deemed to be important for the social welfare. That is 2 marks, so it says 40 marks. That was our team micro. Then team economic issues. Here we are, I'm with you, discussing detailed measures to combat inflation. So in this situation, the examiner can simply require you to discuss measures to combat inflation in general, or can require you to discuss measures to combat demand pull or cost push inflation. So evaluate the South African inflation target for 10 marks. Introduction, we define inflation as significant increase in general price level, and then any other correct level conclusion is required will be given 2 marks. And then we continue. Fiscal policy measures. Government spending. Government should cut down spending by lowering rates of salaries increase by cancelling existing infrastructure projects, or even postponing the existing ones that are planned. Government can decrease borrowings to finance expenses and cut the budget that can reduce the quantity of money in circulation. Government, through the central bank, can buy or sell bonds to increase or decrease availability of cash in the economy. Then we continue taxation. Increasing direct taxes such as income tax and property tax reduce the disposable income and cap demand for goods and services. Increasing indirect taxes such as VAT and tax on fuel or on liquor will increase the cost of living and will reduce the demand for goods and services. Implementing such charges on imported goods will cap spending on imported goods. Monetary policy. Monetary policy measures are measures undertaken by the central bank to ensure stability on the economy and reduce money supply. Price stability is achieved through decreasing money supply in order to reduce the demand for goods and services. Central bank can use a monetary policy. Central bank through monetary policy committee. They monitor the change in CPI and PPI to take relevant measures to keep prices within the target range. Contractional monetary policy can be implemented if ever inflation is too high, especially if it's a demand pull inflation. Repo rate, increasing lending rate, repo rate to commercial banks result to them increasing interest rate. And then these banks would have to charge higher interest rate on loans and overdrafts, making more expensive for people to borrow money from a commercial bank. Then there will be less demand for goods and services. And then we continue. Cash reserve requirement. Increasing cash reserve requirement decrease the liquidity within the banking system. Commercial banks keep most of their revenues in the central bank, which money available for credit creation in the economy. This decrease the aggregate demand and decrease prices in the economy. And then we continue with open market transaction. So quantitative easing is achieved when the central bank buys financial securities or paper from commercial banks to increase the quantity of money in circulation. However, to curb inflation, the central bank sells bonds to the commercial banks to collect money from the circulation. That can lead to the decrease in demand for goods and services because there will be less money supply available in the economy. And then moral suasion or moral persuasion. Availability of credit increases the demand for goods and services because we know if there's more credit, people are always tempted to spend. The central bank tightens moral persuasion to reduce inflation. It instructs commercial banks to be stricter when creating credit if inflation rate is above the maximum target rate. Commercial banks are instructed to act at a manner that is suitable for prevailing economic conditions. And then inflation targeting. The central bank sets inflation targeting to apply and applies measures to meet the inflation target. It is believed that by setting the target, inflation expectations of consumers, producers, and employers and workers will be reduced, and that they will behave in such a way that achieve inflation target. This raises the cost of credit and reduces the availability of credit to the various sectors in the economy. And then combating cost push inflation will increase productivity. Increase in effective productivity are the best option to increase supply and reduce prices. Wage increase need to be accompanied by productivity increase in order to keep prices within at the lower level. Human resource development. It forms a very important part of the structural measures to improve supply side of the economy. Improving technology. Technology can increase production of aggregate supply to release pressure on prices. And then we continue competition. The best method to keep check on profit margins is to ensure competition domestically and internationally. Encouraging competition is one of the strategies applied to fight against inflation because its greatest advantage is competitive prices. Less government intervention easily attracts foreign direct investments into the economy, which increases the production. Import control. Tightening import control negatively impact on cost of production. This decreases competitiveness of businesses, and it is therefore important for the government to implement import control measures government to implement fair import control measures so that there won't be high much inflation. Then we have additional part evaluate inflation targeting. The success factors. It has been able to curb demand pull inflation by limiting consumption. Inflation target give confidence to investors as they remain confident that prices will remain stable within the economy over a period of time. It makes consumers feel secure because about future inflation rate. It reduces economic uncertainties, which create platform for sound economic growth. Promoting accountability for South African Reserve Bank by ensuring that it adjusts interest rate if inflation rate goes below or above the target rate. And then we continue. The failures. Inflation target was introduced to control demand pull inflation rather than the cost push inflation. Cost push inflation is caused by the factors that fall outside the control of monetary policy. Prices of key import cannot be managed by inflation target, and they increase prices of final goods excessively. Inflation target results to economic strain when existing inflation is cost push inflation, but central bank use measures its measures to combat the demand pull inflation. That can also lead to the stagflation because there will be less money supply, more unemployment, and high level of inflation. That was 10 marks for you. And then conclusion would be any of higher order monitoring changes in inflation rate is one of the important objectives by central bank and the government, which protect the purchasing power of money to create good environment for economic activities and social stability. 2 marks. The essay is 40 marks. And then the last example, discussing detailed following problem and intentional measures taken to ensure sustainable development. And then additional part, why does the market become the main reason for environmental deterioration? Introduction. You define environmental sustainability. Environmental sustainability is the act of protecting or safeguarding the present value of the environment to remain intact even for future generations. We'll continue. Intentional problems include number one, biodiversity loss. In that case, we refer to the if species become extinct or die out of completely, they cannot be reversed or recovered. The modern techniques such as gene transplant can limit the loss of species or biodiversity. The Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species or sites set policies to deal with species loss. Preventing biodiversity loss results to species lasting longer even for future generations. Illegal hunting, unlimited fishing, and unregulated deforestation endangers the lives of plants and animals in the environment. And then we continue. Chemical waste. Chemical waste is a toxic it has a negative effect on living beings and can cause infertility or death. Chemical waste needs to be carefully managed to ensure it does not seep into the groundwater. Chemical waste result to immediate death, for example, from insecticides or pesticides, death after a time period due to digestive incapacity, nerve malfunctioning, tissues degeneration, cancer, and infertility of human and animal plants. And then the Stockholm Protocol is a United Nations agreement to limit chemical waste. So remember, that's when you talk about the disposal of chemicals or use chemical into the running water or the environment, which can lead to the death of species. It can lead to the death of flora and fauna. Animals drinking the water that is full of chemicals can die. Plants can also die if ever they are irrigated through what we call water that are full of chemical. Hazardous waste. In this case, we are referring to highly toxic material that is disposed into the environment that takes time to decompose because it can stay for the longer period of time. It is also regarded as a dangerous waste or radioactive waste that can take long to decompose in the environment. In this case, we talk about the likes of cardboards, bottles, as well as plastic. They cannot decompose easily in the environment. The Basel Convention is an international agreement to manage nuclear waste. And then we continue. Climate change. Global warming primarily caused by climate change. Climate change can be reversed through widespread international cooperation, e.g., sharing weather information and weather patterns, agreeing on limit pollution, and banning chemical products such as greenhouse gases that damage ozone layer. The Kyoto Protocol of 1997 is an international agreement to limit the production of greenhouse gases such as voluntary reduction of carbon dioxide levels did not succeed. And then we continue. Loss of indigenous knowledge. Indigenous people have a lot of knowledge about natural environment, which they use to make living. Indigenous people traditionally use organic methods and natural processes to earn living that were not harmful into the environment. So this knowledge is getting depleted slowly, and if it can be lost, it can never be recovered. So it is therefore important for this knowledge to be taken care of. As indigenous people lose their habitats or urbanized, this knowledge is disappearing and is being lost to the world forever. Local capacity building is very important for the internal sustainability of indigenous people, e.g., finding a way for them to earn living in their traditional environment. And then we check additional part. We're almost done. The market is driven by self-interest. It overconsumes resources without considering what we call the damage it causes. And then the market considers the environment as an asset to be used for its own benefit. And then sustainability is achieved in the free market only to the extent that resource prices rise as they become scarce, less available, and through the development of eco-friendly technology. Technology can be a problem on environmental degradation since machines used by industries are burning fossil fuels. And then we continue. Externalities such as air pollution caused by factories cannot be stopped without restrictive policies. Lack of knowledge. Business can cause damage without realizing it, e.g., companies making aerosol cans such as spray on deodorants and did not know the damage effect they had on the ozone layer. Carelessness. People continue with harmful practices and leave future generations to worry about consequences. And then the conclusion at the higher order level. Environmental degradation is one of the global issues which has resulted in the severe changes in weather patterns and a further threat to human life, species, and food security. That was for 40 marks. So these are some examples that have been provided. Team economic issues. These are some essays that we have sampled for you, but remember we have 6 essays to focus on that. You must ensure that if you want to answer question 6, you know them. Team micro, we sampled 2 essays for you, but you must know all essays that are there in the microeconomics so that you can master the question paper tomorrow. One thing for sure, the paper will be accessible and it can be easy for you. So ensure that we are ready for the question paper. And then as the team or candidates or the group of 2024, I thank you for everything, for supporting our live streamings and also for being there to obtain this basic information and important information for you so that you can add the knowledge that you have obtained from your teacher. I wish you all the best for tomorrow, and I believe you will conquer and you will master your economics tomorrow. I am Mr. Mklomo. Thank you. I will meet you again when we meet somewhere in South Africa. Ta-da.